Hello, and welcome to the NPRD podcast with nurse practitioner and registered dietitian Robin Kievit. Eating disorders, body image, medicine, they are all interconnected. But with so many programs, techniques, and advice to choose from, it's easy to be overwhelmed. Robin, with more than 25 years of experience as a nurse practitioner and registered dietitian, offers help and hope for everyone. Families, children, and adults. Along with veteran talk show host and good friend, Jordan Rich, Robin invites you to learn much more right here on the NPRD podcast.
This podcast is sponsored by Galen Hope, a mental health and eating disorder treatment center. Call 561-556-8208 or visit galenhope.com. That's Galen, galenhope.com. And now, here's Robin.
Welcome back to the NPRD podcast. Today we have Jeanette Alonso, licensed mental health counselor, and she's the clinical director of Galen Hope. Welcome, Jeanette.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Your background is unique. So tell us about you and how you got to Galen Hope. And I think you've been there 2.5 years now, right?
Yes, correct. Yes.
Yeah.
We've only been open for 3 years. So I've been here pretty much, I would say, almost from the start, pretty early on, seeing the program grow. And yes, my experience, I have been practicing for about almost 20 years, and I started my work working with exclusively with trauma. And then about a few years later, got into working with eating disorders, where it wasn't uncommon to be able to work with trauma and eating disorders together. But since then, I've been working exclusively. So it's almost about 15 years now that I've been working with eating disorders at all levels of care, working through residential, PHP, IOP, and even in outpatient and private practice. I've been working closely with Wendy Oliver Pyatt and Dr. Boyers, who are the founders of Galen Hope, since the start really of my work with eating disorders. And I'm happy to be now the clinical director of Galen Hope and really leading this team. So just definitely excited to be in this role and really use my experience, my past experience, in a place where now I'm supervising the staff on site, supervising them for licensure, but also really managing the clinical programs. The program has grown tremendously since we started, and that's also been wonderful to kind of really bring in my years of experience and being able to really help the program grow, but also really help the clinicians grow as well in this field. And really the rewarding piece of seeing these clients go from starting at our highest level of care to successfully discharging our program.
I love it when folks follow the trajectory. It's a beautiful thing. And I think that you're very passionate about families and helping families. And I'd love to hear what you really feel gets in the way of families. What are the barriers that get in the way of treatment of their children becoming recovered?
I am very passionate about this topic because throughout all my years, but particularly now where I am here at Galen Hope, our program is very heavy on family involvement. And so I've been able to see clients really be successful in their treatment. And really what I've noticed is the families that are involved in all the programming that we offer that has nothing really to do with the client being involved in it. It's strictly support and groups and programming just for parents, in addition to the family work and other work that they do with the client. So of course, I've seen the success when they're heavily involved from the start, are very much a part of the team and very trusting of the team and building that trust, obviously, in the relationships. And so what I do notice that is not successful, or what I do notice becomes a barrier, is when we are dealing with families who really struggle to trust the process, who are not as involved, not as engaged and coming into the family programming. Sometimes, obviously, we do see families with their own history of mental health and their own struggles, and when they're not open to the recommendations from our team, in particular, to work on their own concerns. So I do see, but what I do see is when families struggle to hold the line. A team is, working with eating disorders is very challenging and poses a lot of things that come up where a lot of times the parents needing to hold the line as far as even length of stay, needing a
Mm-hmm.
client to stay in treatment, and to not run from when it becomes a little bit more difficult. And parents, not being able to hold the line, saying, it's their choice at the end of the day, hearing that, knowing that them perhaps not helping us in that place is going to have this client leave our doors and potentially relapse is difficult. And we like to work as a team with families. So when we don't have that part of the piece, I see that it is a barrier. And in addition to that, we've had, and I've experienced families who maybe come in and are almost wanting to dictate the treatment,
Right.
unfortunately, wanting to question things that from all our years of experience, we know is what's in the best interest of their child. And when that starts to happen and there's, some discord, there's can be a lot of treatment interfering behaviors. We'll say a recommendation. Well, this is what your child might need to have for an evening snack. And they're like, well, I don't think that that's what they have, or it's okay if they didn't have it all. And so when you're hearing some of that and that's happening, not only is what the message that's being sent to the client, but also really what ends up happening at the end of the day is that, they're just not going to sustain the recovery, or at least our recommendations. And so, we do see that that does interfere with the process. A lot of times, even that can interfere with our own relationship building with the client. And I'm thinking of with adolescents, how
Absolutely.
impressionable that they are, right? And so they oftentimes don't have boundaries, and they'll tell their child, your dietitian or your therapist told me this X, Y, and Z, or we're talking about, next thing you know, the client comes in and they're like, my mom told me, and all of a sudden you're just, what do we do with this now? Because this is not, you would think that, they would have the awareness to not share those things. And so sometimes we do struggle with that. And sometimes it could be out of just it's their first time in treatment and we just have to educate them and they'll understand. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, we won't do that again. Other times it's where it's just a characterological or issue or maybe their own struggles with mental health or we don't know, it can be various reasons. Maybe they're just not ready to hold the line. They're scared. They could be scared to do that too. Whatever it is, we do try to get to the bottom of it. By no means do we allow that we do try our best to make sure that we don't have experiences and these treatment interfering behaviors. And we do try our best to support the families and tell them how that wouldn't be helpful or what would be more helpful. But unfortunately, we do see some of that, and it's hard. It's hard because for us, it's so, like I said, I've seen where we have the families really do the work, willing to just surrender to the process. Really, when I see parents being, it's incredible when I tell them and they're in the hot seat. They're the ones, and one family session, it's not because we say it's a whole family thing, not one person necessarily is to blame or whatnot, but everyone is willing to just be vulnerable. And that I just finished talking to a client who just came out of a really difficult family session. And it was wonderful to hear her say, I mean, we talked about things I've never been able to talk about, and it was okay. And, my dad had to say things, I had to say things, my mom, and we were all like in the hot seat. So it's just such a great opportunity because if not now, then when?
Right.
When? This is the time that they're taking from their lives, all of them, really, the sacrifice that the parents are also putting, but also the child is that this is the moment. And it's so validating for these, clients to see that their parents are seeing their pain, but their parents are also acknowledging maybe things that they need to work. It's just beautiful to see it all come together. And it's really what I see as a key to success. And any family that comes in, when I meet with them, I usually meet with them as they come in through our doors for the first time. I do share that with them. And just today, we had a new client today, told mom this. And obviously, it was easier to tell her. She's very much on board, but it was more, doesn't matter, kind of the spiel of letting them know this is what I feel would be what would lead to success. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned earlier, how nice it is to go through all the levels of care. That is, our intention, right, is to have our clients do that. And the parents supporting us with that is essential, So definitely an area that I feel very passionate about.
Yeah.
I've seen families grow from being skeptical at first, because I mean, obviously you're not going to just come in and you don't know us, but I've seen them grow from being a little skeptical at first, maybe a little traumatized from their experience prior to
Mm-hmm.
coming to us, to then, being able to, again, have that relationship, see for themselves, that things are getting better, and just ultimately, maybe getting involved more. And then, of course, being, um, very happy with the results.
Right.
So yeah, I think for me, it doesn't matter the age. We have adults. Like I said, I have the adolescents, but then we have the adults, and even with our adults, doesn't matter how old, getting those parents in here. We have parents here that are older,
Older.
and they're still coming in and they're learning a lot, and they are being able to talk about things again that they've never been able to talk about, that is essential, and a big part of maybe a lot of what the client is struggling with. So I do feel strongly about it. It's hard to imagine a program that would work with eating disorders and doesn't involve the family as much.
Agreed. Yeah.
And the communication is key. We have not just a family therapy, but they're also doing parent coaching. And
Mm-hmm.
that's an opportunity where the therapist is there speaking with the families, about how do they manage the week to week, or how do they manage whatever might have come up from the family session? How do they respond to them? What feedback they need to get?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, I don't know if that was the greatest way that you could have spoken to your daughter or your
Yeah.
son. And let me give you some skills or tools for that, because clearly you saw that wasn't effective. And really helping everyone just be healthier, not just the client that's here. That's kind of my long
That was great. So,
questions, like, answer to your question, but
yeah,
yeah.
because a lot of the time, especially with new families, it's so much information, and there may be different levels of care recommended.
Yes.
There's often quite a great deal of bargaining that goes on. And that's where I think I see things get muddled really the most, and in a way how some of the pieces began, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to be a parent. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
add in add in mental health challenges that are an eating disorder, I say to parents, this, like, parenting's hard. This is like ridiculously hard.
Yeah.
Like, they have to hold their line.
It's hard, and some of the clients are probably really good at scaring their parents,
Mm-hmm.
getting them to a point where, you know, um, and the disorder can be really manipulative, and so it's hard sometimes for them to make the right choices, when we would say the right, quoting, right choice, but really they try to do their best. And I've told parents, you this whole time you've tried your best. You're not going to be perfect. Yes, there were things that happened along the way. You're here now, and we're going to, work and make sure that we go, get you guys in a better place, your child, but you as a family, to be in a much better place outside of here, and to not have to come back here. We say that a lot, this is a big sacrifice. We don't want you to have several interruptions in your life. And so, but there is a lot of that process of really also joining with the families and understanding, yes, this is a really difficult process, and it's hard to do it alone, which is why we want to work together with them, and why that's like the best way until they can on their own, can figure it out. But there's a lot of validation, of course, and really meeting them where they're at. And so it is important for them to have that support. That's why we offer so much of it,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that they're not feeling alone in it. So there's a lot of communication that happens. It isn't just those parent coaching calls. They could just, they have access to the team, and we're, to
Right.
me, to the team. And so we're, definitely making sure that they're feeling reassured that we're working on our goals, and that they're a part of the process too. So yeah, but it's hard. It is hard. I commend, a lot of times I get teary-eyed when I'm telling the parents, this wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for your support, and it was for you. And I just
Mm-hmm.
look at them and I tell them that, because I do know the great work that we do here. And it's not so much that it's we do great therapy. It's not that just because the parents, and that's but it's just so important. Such a big part of it. It makes a really big difference for all the work that we're doing, because it's rough. It's hard. But yeah, and so I do feel like letting them know all the time, and praising them for their,
Right.
how much they support, and just thanking them and showing them, and the progress. It's nice. It's nice when we see the families come together we have once a month family day, and they come together. We have a full day of programming for them. It's so nice to see them talking to each other about,
Mhm.
oh, my daughter did this, and my son, I couldn't believe they did this. And it's so nice for them to connect with each other. They also do that every other week in a support group. They get to know one another. So they're not only just alone in the sense that they have us, the clinical team, but they also have other parents and peers, that they also can feel connected with, and supported by. So I do think that there's so much richness in that. That is what I feel like makes really good, solid eating disorder treatment.
Yeah. We're just going to take a moment for our sponsor.
Galen Hope provides individualized, flexible, and evidence-based eating disorder and mental health treatment. Founded and led by renowned psychiatrist Dr. Wendy Oliver Pyatt and clinical psychologist Dr. Amy Boyers, the program treats adolescents and adults at their locations in Coral Gables and Delray Beach, Florida. Galen Hope's approach is grounded in high-frequency individual therapy, sophisticated psychiatry, extensive family support, and community integration. The program affirms and accommodates all genders, body shapes and sizes, and neurotypes, as well as being able to provide many of their services for individuals and families in Spanish.
Find out more at galenhope.com.
What if you have a family where one parent is fully on board and the other
Mhm.
parent is just not there? Or the other parent, their take is, well, just don't do that, or just do this other thing.
Yeah.
There's just, and because a lot of the time getting to this point is the child, whether it's an adult child or a young child, feeling very not seen. So now we have one parent on board, the other parent's not on board. What's your take on that in terms of your own clinical experience?
Yeah, we've definitely experienced that. And for several reasons. It could be because they're a divorced family. Not, one parent might be the one who brought them here, and the other parent's like, I don't know if they really need this. Then, you might have just, completely different views on mental health and how to handle and manage that. So we have seen it. And so I think our initial meetings with the families and getting that information is important, and really trying to conceptualize and understand the family and the parents in this case. If that's something that we start to see, either we know it from the start, and so we know that maybe the therapy, mostly we're going to rely on having the support from the one parent. If one is completely not wanting to be involved, we're still going to try to engage that parent. We're still going to send them all the information. We're going to try to encourage them, and hopefully they will meet with us, and even maybe they'll be willing to do, one or two calls here or there. But we'll do our best to try to engage, even if at least it's that one parent. But I think us even understanding if that is happening, getting our own understanding, sometimes even the client might tell me, they'll say, well, I know my dad's not going to be, and we did have one, and my dad doesn't want anything to do this, whatnot, and this and that. And we are able to get from the client, the wife, and a little bit from the dad as to, understanding the why. And that kind of helped. And I'm thinking of a particular case, and that kind of helped us to even help this client come to terms with the limitations
Right.
with that parent. Was an adult client in his 30s. So it was very interesting, because while it would have been probably the most groundbreaking thing is to have that dad have been part of that treatment, because it was so much embedded into a lot of his concerns. It was it was also more of like a reality of he still needed to move on with his life, and he still needed to be able to cope and deal and be an adult, a functional adult, with the reality that, his dad was probably not always or 100% going to come around, and that his approval, like you said, wanting to be seen, his approval, while obviously we understood through history and understand this client was so important, it wasn't going to be what he was going to hang on. And there was a lot of work that was done, even without the dad, about that relationship. So it was beautiful that we were still able to work on the relationship without actually the dad. So much so that I think there was a family event, and his sister had to, usually it was always an argument or something, and the sister had made a note let us know, but also let him know, I can tell how much work you've done. You guys were able to be in the same space. Everything was calm. You were civil. He said things that would have triggered you, and you were very okay, and he handled it well. And that was a pivotal moment for him to see somebody from the outside that was able to point that. And when I thought to myself, I was like, this is work that we've done without this dad. So we have encountered that. And I think the idea is to always try to engage them, though, in some
Yeah.
sort of way. If they're a divorced family and they're highly contentious, you can't get them both into the room. We will have, a session with mom, a session with dad separately. So we do our best with what we have, but that definitely is a little bit challenging when you have one parent who believes one thing and on the other. With eating disorders, everyone needs to be on their toes on the same
Mhm.
page and sending the same message. So it would affect the treatment, of course, if there's one parent who's not following the recommendations and they're living in the same home, let's say, with the client, while another parent is the one taking all the burden of the work and the support. So we do our best with that. Maybe the parent that we have the relationship with and the one where is most invested through them is hopefully getting them to get their spouse or their partner as, to be a little bit more involved. We'll never stop, trying.
Yeah. From what you were saying too before, this particular example you were giving was a
Hmm.
client in their 30s.
Yeah.
It takes us a long time, whether it's us or patients or clients, to understand if a parent, if any person isn't really available to us. And sometimes it sounds like from in this particular experience, learning that was part of the healing
Yeah.
process,
Yeah.
right?
And that's hard. That's hard
Yeah,
to come
it's
to
really
terms
hard.
when it's your parent and it's where you ideally would be meeting a lot of your emotional needs are met a lot of the times when you're from childhood from your parents, and so not being able to get that
Yeah.
and maybe being in the pursuit of that your whole life. Yeah, that's challenging. I know for this client it was something we had to work on, and I think he did great with that. And we did our best definitely with that. And I think it's easier when you're an adult, of course,
Right.
it's so much harder when you're seeing with an adolescent, and when you see when the parents are not on board, not doing these things, and you're saying, my goodness, like, what is this going to look like when they're an adult? If right now they're interfering in the treatment in this way, or they're not following recommendations, or they're not really hearing them or validating them. And, so it's hard to imagine what is this going to look like in adulthood if they're not
Mhm.
putting in the work and being a part of the team. So
So we need lots more family therapists. I don't know about you guys down in Florida, but like I could use 10 more family therapists right now for different cases. What would you say to younger clinicians coming into the field? What would your pearls be to
okay.
younger clinicians coming into the field of eating disorders?
I will say a little bit anecdotally from my perspective, I had not specialized. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I'm not a licensed marriage and family therapist. Um, but of course, you learn things here and there. In working with eating disorder treatment, family therapy was always a big part of it. But I I always thought it was so intimidating, and no way would I want to specialize in it. When I worked exclusively with adolescents and was just at the treatment center, just the family therapist, is where I recognized um, how rewarding it was and humbling. And I think one of the things that I would is maybe if there's any being intimidated by parents or these big figures, at the end of the day, they're there for treatment. They're looking towards you for support. You are the expert in the room. You are,
Mhm.
the person there that they're literally, they need help. So I would, maybe remove a little bit of this like pressure of like, oh my goodness, they're gonna come and tell me, and they're gonna be rude or whatnot. And I say this because in eating disorder treatment in a treatment facility, I know it can get like that where you have the complex family cases, but ultimately just remembering that, you're there to help them, and that if they're hopefully, willing to do the work, they'll listen, to your guidance. I think it's important that if it's an area that you still feel uncomfortable with, we're not as obviously having supervision for that.
Right.
But I do think that it's one of those that I never thought that I would care so much about and love doing it. And when I did it, now I see how important it is. And having that experience, I think, is great if you're going to be a therapist working with eating disorders. It's going to be important to do family work and to understand. That is also some way, one of the biggest ways that you're going to create such a big impact on your client's life. The moment that you see a parent validating their child for the first time is the most beautiful thing. You coach them before. I even get teary eyed. You coach them before they come in, you prep them. And when you see that and they come out of there saying, wow, my mom said that, I never thought I would ever have her recognize and validate that. It's like, and I've seen cases, and this is back when I was working, especially with adolescents, where it almost like changed the trajectory of and the relationship because it opened up as well for more conversation, for more vulnerability. The moment that they just and the parents, and like I had remember one parent, if I had known it was going to be that easy, if I would have done this, if I had just told them that I get it, and that was hard for you or whatever. I was like, well, we're going to do a lot more of that. But yes, that is exactly what, this is what family therapy is about. But when you see that, so any clinician just being able to experience that, don't shy away from doing the family work. Get the supervision if you need it, but understand that you're there to help them. They know that, and it's so rewarding when you see those moments and you essentially like were a big part of that. That's wonderful. So that's what I would say. I don't know if that helps, but hopefully, whoever is questioning or doubting that is, I would say, don't shy away and try it and do it.
You made a couple of great points, right? You want to get rid of imposter syndrome. You want to keep
Yeah,
getting
that's the word.
supervision, right? Like we all get that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sometimes. We all question our expertise. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when we're working with families, it can be a little intimidating for a myriad of reasons. But keep getting your supervision, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then hanging on to those really vibrant aha moments that
Mm-hmm.
we have with patients and clients. And then I think also helping them to slow down. I think that sometimes
Yeah.
is one of the keys that we can, that's not rocket science, but let's just slow
Yeah.
down here,
Absolutely. Yeah.
versus keep going. What's some advice you would give to your younger self
Oh,
professionally?
oh, that's such a nice question. Oh my gosh.
And would you take it, right? You could say, I
Yeah.
wouldn't give myself my advice because I wouldn't take it.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. Younger me probably maybe would have not, but I think what I would say to myself is to similar to like you were just mentioning now that imposter syndrome and just kind of really trusting that if someone is putting you in this position to do that, they've trusted your clinical skills enough to that you are there, for and so I would definitely challenge a little bit of those initial nerves or what comes up. I think that would have been something good to hear. I think um, as a young clinician, sometimes you think that you have to have it figured out immediately, right away. And this work with eating disorders and personality disorders, which come up, and trauma, which is so complex, it's so much bigger than you, right?
Mm,
So sometimes there's so much pressure so I would have probably tell myself, that it's okay. You're not going to have it all figured out or wrapped up in a bow, and you know there's going to be this is going to be challenging, so and to not be afraid to say that you are, you need help or you need, guidance or whatnot. I think I would probably tell myself that a little bit, if I
mhm,
would go tell my younger self, because I think you always try to want to do your best and want to make sure that you're, being the best therapist you can be. And
mhm.
sometimes, you have a case that's really challenging, and maybe you're not going to knock it out of the park all the time. And I
Yeah.
think that's important. And I would say that to other clinicians listening, but I would also say it to my younger self, because especially when you're starting off, it can be intimidating. So I've learned that, sometimes it's out of my hands now as
Mhm.
certain things, and you do your best, and not to personalize that.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't always have to be right, but being kind helps,
Yes.
in
That's
these
a good one.
situations. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on today,
Aw,
Jeanette.
thank you, Robin.
It was so lovely to have you here and just to keep hearing more about Galen Hope and also your career trajectory. You worked very hard and come up to this place of being clinical director. Congratulations. So we'll have you back on again. Thank you so much.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the NPRD podcast with Robin Kievit. We invite you to subscribe, download, rate, and review us, and share this valuable podcast with friends and family. Help and hope is found here. For more, just go to robinkievit.com. That's ROBYNKIEVIT.com. Or check out thenprd.com.